Dan Bublin's Comedy Productions.
My friend Dan, he's got a podcast, 'cause all comics need a podcast, and nobody had a podcast called The Art of Bombing. So Dan went out and bought a tape deck. Who knows why he bought a tape deck? Podcasts don't get played on tape decks, but Dan is from the 80s. So hey there, all you funny jerks, come talk to Dan about your work. Tell him all about your worst times. It's The Art of Bombing. Welcome to an all-new episode of Between Bombs Callbacks, where Josh and I call back the most recent episode. And in this episode, we are calling back episode 292?
292, baby.
292. We're getting so close to 300. I can't keep track.
You just want to say 300 right there.
I do, because I keep bringing it up because we're so close.
Oh man, only a few weeks away from the big 300. This time, Chase Tressler. He's a fusion guy, martial arts, singing, comedy. Little jack of all trades.
That's right. He's a triple threat for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
And he like his holy trinity of comedy is good jokes, good drinks, and good times. He's just a rule of three kind of guy.
That sounds about like Chase. Yeah, he's great. He's one of the first comics that I kind of met when I moved up to the area too. And it was interesting because I didn't realize he actually lived in Loveland. So he is actually part of the Loveland comedy scene, which at this point in time, I believe is just him, myself, and Jeff Albright.
There's three guys. We're staying in the box here. Rule of three. We got three things.
I take that back. I'm lying. There's a couple newer comics that do live here in Loveland now that have started in the last year. So the scene in just Loveland is growing.
Gotta get rid of those guys. I mean, it's good that it's growing.
Oh, we want to grow. We want it to grow.
But three guys at a time, please. Like it's like 30. Let's get to
30. Okay. We got to keep
300.
Rule of three.
300. See, there's something going on today, man, with the threes. We got three topics. We got two topics, and we got a question. So three things to cover.
We do have a lot of things to cover. That's right. We are at the end of the show. We are going to be doing questions now from people who listen to the podcast. That's where these questions are coming from. Listener questions. I just want to throw out real quick. If you have a question, now these questions can be comedy related. It can be questions about the podcast. It can be questions about Josh and I's careers. It can be just questions about life. Maybe you want our opinion on something. We'd be glad to answer them, and just know that we don't claim to be experts in anything. We're just giving our insight, and it's just going to be a new segment at the end of the show. So if you have a question that you would like to ask us, you can send it to us via email, or you can send it on Messenger on either Instagram or Facebook. But our email is theartofbombingpod@gmail.com. So if you have questions you'd like us to answer, you can ask there, or you can go into the Facebook group, the Art of Bombing Bomb Squad Facebook group, and leave your questions there. But before we get to those questions, we've got some hot topics, don't we, Josh?
Hot topics. But I'm worried about this, Dan. People might not have context for it unless they go back and listen to the episode.
Oh, that is a good point. We should probably let them go back and listen. All right. Are you guys ready? 3, 2, 1. We're back. We're back. I hope you enjoyed episode 292, not 293, not 291, but 292 with Chase Tressler.
I went back and listened to it again, and so I'm full of fresh. Like it's on the front of my mind, and the first thing that I thought of after listening to it was that there are benefits to reviewing your old sets.
Absolutely.
Like not just like yesterday's or the most recent one, but going back a ways.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you think?
I think so. I really agree with that. I think and you know, maybe this is a hot take, but I almost think sometimes that's more beneficial than listening to your most recent, because sometimes, and I don't know how it is for you, but I know for me, you know, sometimes I forget about jokes. You know, you're
Mhm.
constantly working on a new 5 or new 10 or whatever, and you're throwing it in and trying to work out new material. And for me, sometimes I rotate in. When I rotate in stuff, I rotate out stuff, and then it doesn't become muscle memory anymore because I'm not doing those jokes and I just kind of
Yeah.
forget. Or I listen back to some open mics and I'll hear a joke that I was working on and I never did anything with. And it's like, oh, now I'm further on in my career where I have a little bit better understanding of comedy and writing. I can now go back to that joke and probably, you know, get it to where it's a good joke. I could really mold it and shape it and get it to where I need it to be a good, polished joke.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of times what stops me from doing that is it's difficult to hear.
Mhm.
And I'm not just talking about the usual sound of my own voice,
That's what it is for
but
me.
yeah, for everybody.
I don't
But
like listening to your voice either, Josh. You're funny.
oh, that's funny. Yeah. No, I don't blame you. I don't blame you. And yeah, it sounds like I should have a game show somewhere. I don't, but that's just the voice that I got. And what the other thing that stops me from listening to it is just the idea that, okay, this isn't enjoyable. This is so bad, right? I'm gonna mess this
Oh,
up or
yeah.
that up, or I wasn't prepared, or I'm talking at them, not to them. List goes on. But I think when you have that, like, you're supposed to have that feeling because
Mhm.
you're better now and you're reviewing something in hindsight. That means from a better perspective, you're a better comedian listening to a worse comedian. So if you go back and you listen to your set from a few years ago and you've got absolutely nothing constructively critical to say about it, that's bad.
Yeah, I agree. You know, and that's something I've definitely been coming more to terms with and being more aware of. You know, an example of that was when my dry bar comedy special came out last year. You know, I had filmed it a year and a half before it came out. And so I watched it and I appreciated it for what it was, and that when it was recorded and the circumstances around recording it, because it was filmed during COVID and they had limited capacities and things like that. So there were some other variables that definitely made an impact on the recording itself. But when I watched it, it came out a year and a half, almost 2 years after I recorded it. And I had a tough time because I was like, oh man, I'm so much better. But that's exactly to your point. You got to go into it with, this is an older, not as experienced, not as a good comedian version of yourself. So you have to have that perspective and know that, sure, it might not be the greatest comedy and it might not be on par to where you are now. And that's good, because that means you're getting better as a comedian.
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing that came out of it was good goals to have at open mics,
And I think
right?
that's, speaking of getting better, that's a good way to do it.
Right. Yeah, to have a plan, have some goals that you want to accomplish. And I thought on the episode you gave some examples, like, I'm going to work on this transition between these two jokes. I'm going to try this new tag. Something specific
Yeah.
that you're trying to accomplish there. Not, which is not, I want to win the mic. I want to be the best. Now, we do, like, we see an audience respond well. We want to get a good response. We want to do well because that feels good.
Oh, absolutely. But again, I agree with you. That shouldn't be the objective of the open mic, having the best set of the night. I mean, ultimately you want to be funny and you want to get those laughs and a good response, but you need to use that to get your jokes to where they need to be, so you can get your paid gigs and get your
Yeah.
showcase spots, and hopefully get into festivals and do good in contests, and things that'll help further your career. You should always be thinking about that. Where it's easy to be short-sighted and think about what's happening now. But we don't ever, we don't always think about how do we use it to get us to the next step. We think, well,
Yeah.
we think kind of in baby steps, but we need to be thinking long term. You think, oh, this open mic, I'm going to test a couple new jokes. I'm going to go win the audience or whatever. And then maybe somebody locally will see me and maybe they'll put me on a show. Well, then what happens when you get on that show? What happens? How are you going to use that show to your advantage? How are you going to, get, maybe get a following? Same thing when your comics put, content out on the internet. How are you using that to get you to the next level or to then take that next step? And that's something that starts at the open mic level. You should be thinking about that right away.
Yeah.
Have some kind of a goal in mind. For me personally, and I'm sure we've talked about it on the podcast before, because we do talk about goals a lot on the podcast. I'm a big advocate for setting goals when I go to open mics now. And I think every time you go, and it's also a good way to, if you're the whole grand scheme of goals, you should have goals for open mic, you should have career goals, you should have long-term, short-term, all kinds of different types of goals. And the one thing nice about doing setting these small goals at an open mic, they're easily achievable.
Yeah.
If you start achieving goals, that helps, it fuels you to want to keep actively trying to achieve goals, even your longer term goals. And you can even incorporate how, a goal at an open mic is a step that's part of a long-term goal. And, for example, my goal here, the goal at the open mic is to work on 1 new minute of material that will then go into my 5-minute set that I'm polishing to get a good tape for submitting and auditioning to then the next thing.
Taking a bigger goal and breaking it up into smaller pieces helps you achieve the bigger goal. And the other thing that I thought of when you were describing that is our behavior drives how we feel. It's not the other way around. If we want to feel good or feel positive about comedy, if we want to feel like we're in the mood to write jokes, you got to do the behavior, right? Like I sit around sometimes and go, oh, I haven't written a good joke in a while. Nothing's come to me. And that's because I'm not doing it. I'm not writing. I'm not leaving space in my day to write, or I'm not going to open mics or shows to get into the behavior that's supporting the need to write for it. And so then my attitude becomes, oh, well, yeah, I'm just not funny right now. Nothing's coming to me. I don't want to go out. I don't want to work. But when I start doing things, it's kind of like you're like on your way home from like your normal work job at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and you get to choose between going to the gym or going home and watching YouTube and sitting on your ass and drinking beer. You want to do the second thing because you just put yourself through a hard day at work, and you deserve it. But when you take that left turn and you go to the gym, it sucks at first. It sucks during it because it's the gym. But when it's over, you feel awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that, like, you put that feeling into yourself by doing the action. And same goes here with these goals you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes even for me, not, just thinking outside of an open mic, sometimes I set little goals when I'm at a show, and not necessarily to try a bunch of new material, obviously, because I want, the show to be good, but I just had a big show this last weekend, and I performed at a historical theater. And I mean, this place is huge. There was a big audience. It was a fundraiser. There's a lot of elements. I had to do an hour. It wasn't really an opener. They had, a TV personality that did some talking or whatever. It wasn't really doing a set though. Just kind of more of an informative piece about the organization, what they do, that kind of thing. And then they were introducing me. So, but there was a lot of pressure on, and I've been meaning to do this for a while. I have a joke that I do about taking a dab, and I decided that I wasn't sure because it was kind of a Christian backed nonprofit. And I talked to the guy before I went on stage, the person who booked me, about any material restrictions. He was basically like, no, not really, just not a lot of profanity, obviously, which, for me, I'm typically clean comedian. I'm not that edgy, things like that. So if I have a bit that I'm a little worried about, it's still probably pretty mild. But I'd been meaning to try this joke at the end of my set anyway. And I thought, well, this joke for this crowd, because it may be a little more, there may be more, more Christians in the audience or whatever. It might be just a little bit on the riskier, more side of things. So I thought, well, I'm going to do it at the end of my set. That way, if it is too risky, sure, you want to go out on a big laugh. But I did a bit where I got a big laugh right before it. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to do this quickly, or not quick, but I'm going to do this bit. If they don't like it, I don't have to worry about winning them back.
Right. It's over. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, because I'm done.
I'm done. And and the bit went over really good. And I think, because for me, I want to try to move that into being my closing bit. And so I set that goal for myself to do it in an actual show. And it worked out well. And I was very happy. And, it was one of my better sets that I've done in a long time. According to my fiance, it's the best set she's seen me do. It was the best hour I've done.
Wow.
Yeah, because I was just a little more relaxed. She has seen a lot. So for her to say that, that's pretty good. That's pretty good boost of confidence, because as many shows as she's seen, she should be like, oh man, are you ever going to shut up? All right. Well, I think those were that was some great nuggets that you found in this episode. Some great points. Set your goals. We're going to start wrapping up. We like I said, we have this new segment. Eventually, I'll probably have a transition into the segment where we'll play some music or something and make this more like radio. I just haven't had a chance to make that.
Now.
Thank you. All right.
With my mouth now.
Okay, perfect. So with that, with that being said, we've reached that segment. Ask us anything. That's just going to be the name of the segment. Instead of AMA, it's AUA. Ask us anything. Where you can ask us questions and we'll try to answer them to the best of our abilities. I said at the top of the show, you could, leave them in the group, Facebook, all those things, or email us, theartofbombingpod@gmail.com. This week's question. So this person, who I will mention here in a minute, they had a whole bunch of different questions that were kind of all tied in, I think, into one. But it was a long question. So we're going to break it up piece by piece. So we'll probably come in and out. Maybe on the next episode, we'll do more of this question, depending on what other questions come in. But we're definitely going to get a good start. So this week's questions coming from Betsy sorry, I can't read very good. Betsy Severin Miller. There we go. my bifocals suck. My eyes suck. And I'm sitting at the wrong distance to see the name. So Betsy Severin Miller. There we go. That's what I was trying to say. All right. So the first part of the question, do you see your comedy as a product or a service? And then the second part of that is, do you see it as, this is how I am, take it or leave it, or how can I bring what I have to offer to the audience? Which I think this is a fantastic question.
Yeah,
I really do. How do you feel about this? I'm interested to see, especially now that you're doing more corporate speaking type stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. My head was there too. Product or service. I definitely see it as a service. Now, I could be delivering a product in order to deliver the service. You could kind of play some semantics there.
That's how I kind of see it. I kind of feel as it's both, I mean, the service is you're making people, you're bringing joy to people, and the product is it's your material, and, making them laugh is the service. Yeah. But they kind of go hand in hand.
That's right. I suppose if I were in a situation where somebody could pay me to not actually deliver it in person, like if they wanted to pay me for a recording of jokes, like I could see that as a product. But I think of product anytime that I don't need to interface with a customer in order to deliver what they paid for. But
Oh, that's a good point.
yeah, in the art of doing comedy, though, I mean, you're definitely performing the service. You need to be there. So that's kind of what locks it into service for me.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good perspective. I also think on that, kind of with the second part of that question, take it as I am, or what can I bring to what can I offer to the audience? For me personally, I think it's, it should be kind of a hybrid. I mean, obviously, you want to have your artistic integrity, but you also, there's got to be a compromise, I guess is what I'm saying, between artist and what the audience wants. And that's not to say, because there's a lot of cancel, people talk about cancel culture and free speech and this and that and so on and so forth. Yes, that's, think about all those things. But what I'm saying is you can still be creative. You can still have your artistic integrity and be who you are on stage and still deliver something that is somewhat catered to the audience. You know, and that goes to, read, like we talked about in the last couple episodes, reading the room, seeing what they're responding to, what they're not responding to, and not necessarily changing who you are and bending who you are, but bending your material. And not to say that you're doing material specifically for them, but if you notice that the crowd's not into political jokes and you have some political jokes, but you notice that they're having a good time with family, material about family, and you have material about family, then you shouldn't go out there and do your political humor. You should go out there and do your jokes about family. And those jokes are still going to be delivered and, by who you are and your style and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely, I all those points I agree with. Really, like, it's part of my job to adapt to the surroundings for sure. And that's part of delivering it. But it's also part of my job to be honest with the person paying me and saying, I'm not right for this.
Yes.
Like I can definitely adapt. And, but adapting to me is like, okay, like you said, as I'm going through the bits and I notice that maybe the dark humor isn't working in the small town, let's kind of brighten it up a bit, Josh.
Yeah.
Fine. But I'm also not going to be a good fit for a college. Right. So somebody says, okay, I got a bunch of college students here ready to see some comedy. My jokes about being a dad and working and all of that really just aren't going to pay off for them. And they can find somebody else who's going to do a better job in that case.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
They
can find somebody that's
what
relatable.
I have to the audience, but I got to choose the right audience.
Yeah. And that's another good point with this too, is that, sometimes it isn't so much about offering, what you have to the audience or, this is me, take it or leave it. It's about finding your audience, and that's what's great now with social media. You can, you have the whole world at your fingertips. So you can find your audience and then it doesn't matter. You get that following and they're going to come support you, and because they want to be at your show and see you live, and pretty much doesn't matter what you say. They'll be happy to be there. So
good.
So
good answer.
Yeah. So I think that was a great question. Thank you, Betsy. Well, like I said, there's more to this question. We might kind of get into it a little bit next week, or not next week, but in 2 weeks, because we're only doing this segment on Between Bombs right now. If we start getting a lot of questions, maybe we'll do it in the intros as well. But we're trying to keep things, tight and flowing good. So with that, I think we're going to call this episode done and in the books. What do you think, Josh?
I think as well. Three stamps of approval.
Three stamps of approval, but not 300.
3 things. Betsy has 3 names, so
She does, yeah.
that's 3.
Everything's in threes today. I don't know what it is. Well, with that being said, make sure you follow the show. Make sure you like our content. Join the Facebook group. Everything is down in the show notes as far as links go. Follow us on all the places, and we'll be back next week with a brand new episode of The Art of Bombing. And in 2 weeks, we'll be back with callbacks. See you then.
This has been a Dan Bublitz comedy production. Roar.